Hi, I'm Sally Britton. Oh, and going live is always a scary thing because you never know when your voice is going to crack or when your dogs will come in and bark or a million other things. So bear with me tonight as I answer some pre-submitted user pre-submitted reader questions. So let's just get right to it, shall we? Marilee asks, how hard is it to write a Christmas book when it is still fall outside? This is kind of cheating. Marilee knows me quite well, and she has been the recipient of many frantic texts when I'm in the middle of writing. And it's hard, and she knows that. When I'm writing a Christmas book and it isn't the Christmas season and it isn't even cold outside, things are difficult. I Last year I found something that helped though, and I did it again this year for writing a Christmas book in October, September, October. I had my husband pull down one of my Christmas boxes full of decorations and wreaths and things. And I actually still have some of the little Christmassy things out on my desk. I put them where I can see them. So here's my deer, and I hung one of my favorite ornaments from his little horn. But I have like a miniature Christmas tree and snowflake, and my office door is right across from where I'm sitting, and I've got an enormous wreath that usually goes on my front door, um, on my office door, and that kind of stuff helps. I also have a lot of candles. You can kind of see part of my candle stash right here. These are all candles, and it goes back to where you can't see in the shadows. So I'll pick some Christmas candles out. Um, One of my favorites this time around was flannel, which is from White Barn, and it is delicious. So I'll light a scented candle. I will listen to Christmas music while I write, and I decorate my office ridiculously early for Christmas, and that helps set the mood a little bit. It can still be difficult, though, from time to time. So thank you for the question. All right. Next, Sharon May asked, will you be making a change to my covers? Is what the rest of the question said, like so many others. If so, will the new style cover only be on new purchases? This is an interesting question. It's more about the behind the scenes of the writing world. I will be changing the covers for the first series I published, the Branches of Love series. They are not on YouTube yet, but I'm changing the covers. I am doing entirely new editions with edited scenes, possibly some new scenes, possibly missing some scenes. Um, but I'm in the middle of edits and working on that right now. So that's, I have one other cover change planned, that's for a standalone book. But after the covers change, only the new covers are available through Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all of that. I change the covers everywhere. So if you are working on the Branches of Love series and you like the covers the way they are now, you should order yourself some copies now. The ebook covers, they will update all by themselves, um, because that's just how it works. So if you really love those covers, save them now. Let's see. Sherry Bingham asked, when is your best writing time of day? Night or morning? Oh, that's a good one. It used to be night, and I think it still is when I've got deadlines coming up. I tend to work better after the sun goes down, which is great in the winter because the sun goes down so early. um, Night, usually night. I can work during the day, but the circumstance, I'm a little bit pickier about my process if I'm writing during the day. I have to have the right kind of candle or the right kind of music, or I play with the temperature a lot. At night, tend to just be able to sit down and go. And I don't know if that's just because of who I am or if because that's how the first 2 years of my writing had to be by default. So let's see. Melissa's Bookshelf asked, what and when is your next book coming out? Ooh, thank you for asking. So the next book that comes out, today is Saturday, November 12th, 2022. And as of right now, the next book that comes out is Lord Farley and Miss Frost. And it comes out The week of Thanksgiving. I would need to double check that for sure. I think right now I have it set as the 25th of November, but if I can get everything uploaded quickly, I'm waiting on my editor to finish something up, then I will get that out as soon as I am able. Okay. Melissa, this is different. Melissa asks, have you ever done NaNoWriMo? This is the first year since 2009 that I haven't done NaNoWriMo. I finished a book the first week in November, and I haven't written a single word since because I need a break. So this is the first year I haven't done it. I love NaNoWriMo. For those who are wondering, NaNoWriMo stands for National Novel Writing Month. It's a lot of fun. If you have any writing aspirations, look it up. It's a great way to build a writer community too. My phone just vibrated. Pardon me. Just going to make sure it's nothing too important. Isn't this rude? I'm on a video checking my phone. Ha, it's not important right now. All right. Next question from Jackie. What research books do you use for writing? This is a loaded question because I use a ton, and it really depends on what I'm writing about. There are some great books that span the Regency era, just in general, that give you a good general overview. And some of those are things like Jane Austen's London, Jane Austen's Country Life. I love those. Jane Austen ate and Charles Dickens knew, or what Charles Dickens ate and Jane Austen knew. One of those is the right title. Georgette Hare's Regency World is a good one. And then if I'm getting really specific, I have books about childhood pastimes in the 17th and 18th and 19th centuries. I have books about specific cities. One of my favorite books is actually an academic history book called The Age of Romance. And it talks about how the Romance movement in art and literature happened. So it really depends on what I'm writing. I have map books. I use all kinds of things. There's a lot. Okay. My dog just came in. Gail. Yes, I know. Mommy's talking and not to you. So Gail asked, how did you write your first book and were you worried? Yes and no. I didn't have high expectations for that first book. And it wasn't my first published book wasn't the first time I had written a story. I had written fan fiction for a long time. I love fan fiction. And so I was used to getting a lot of feedback from readers of fanfic, telling me what they did and didn't like. So, so I wasn't really afraid. And like I said, I didn't have a whole bunch of high expectations. I just wanted to get my story out there. So wasn't too worried. Now I worry a lot more, I think, than I did when I started. Carol asks, what makes you swoon? In novels, as well as in fantastic shows and movies, when a man is wearing a long sleeve shirt and he rolls it up or folds it up to reveal his forearm, that does it for me every time, every single time. And it doesn't matter if it's Loki doing it. You guys know what I'm talking about. Tom Hiddleston and those sleeves rolling up was so good in the Loki series. Or if it's a historical romance hero. So absolutely love that. Let's see. What age did you realize, British spelling, that you wanted to be a writer? Very young. I don't know when. I kind of always did, but I was also a pretty practical kid. So I never expected that anybody would accept my books or that it would be easy to be published. So very, very young, maybe 10 years old. I started writing seriously at 14. So this user is Soulful Saint. And they asked, why do you write clean books? Here's the deal. I think that books of all heat levels, that's how we talk about romantic scenes in books and intimate scenes and sex scenes. I think um, all clean or for and because that's looks like some connectability issues. Also, are these you see how blue there? That's screen protect and those off the second. Fast we can get to these questions if I'm having city issues. Which authors are your inspiration? This is the same person asked the last question. A lot of them, old school, of course, Jane Austen, Ellen Montgomery, Louisa May Alcott. I love them. Nathaniel Hawthorne. And newer books, I love Sarah Eden. And I love all my friends who write fantastic Regency books. So really, it's just anybody who writes a book beautifully. They inspire me. All right. And this is Cherie. How do you find time to do everything you do? Family, research, writing. It was a lot harder when my husband was the one who was full-time employed. He is now the stay-at-home parent, and that makes things a lot easier because he takes care of a lot of the day-to-day minutia in terms of the household and kid needs. So, but it is a balancing act constantly. I don't have it figured out. There are some days where I don't do it all or handle it all very well, but all I can do is try. One of my favorite things that my family has adapted to is I have a sign that just says open and closed, and it's in the window of my office. So yes, I have an office and it's wonderful. But if the sign is flipped to open, my kids know that they can come in and talk to me about their day or ask me questions or whatever it is they need. And if it says closed, they'll see that and go, "Ugh," and turn around and go back in the house and talk to their dad or another sibling about whatever it is they need. And that's fantastic. I'm always available for my kids when they come home from school. I talk to them for a couple hours, and then I might work a little bit more until dinner or after dinner. And it's just a matter of figuring out a schedule that works for me and for my kids. Okay, let's see what we have next. Soulful Saint also asked, will you be writing in another genre? If I do, she asked specifically about mysteries. I could not write a mystery. If I do write in any other genres, I'm probably going to write fantasy because that's actually my favorite thing to read. Sally Nielsen, that's her last name, asked, do you have a beginning and end in mind working with an outline? Or do you have a general vision and just let the story take on a life of its own as you write? Kind of a mix of both. I usually know how a story is going to end, and I usually have a couple of key scenes that I'm excited about and have pre-planned to write. Drop my phone. But mostly I'm just writing as I go. Sometimes I will plan a scene out. Let's see. So I'll have like a beginning planned and I'll write the beginning. And then after that, I take a break and I write in a notebook and jot down ideas for the next scene. So I kind of plan as I go. So I don't just sit down without any idea of what I'm writing. But things are usually only planned out a day or two in advance before I actually sit down and do the work. And that kind of keeps it fresh in my brain so I don't get bored of the story before I've even finished it. Because if I've already completely outlined a story, for me, that's a little bit boring because I already know how it's going to go and end. I like to kind of learn as I go. This is an odd question. Christine asked, do you have a favorite salad? What's your most recently read favorite book? Favorite 80s movies? Best things your kids ever said? So several questions there in once. Favorite salad. I actually love any salad that has blue cheese crumbles, and I don't want to hear how it's mold, And I also really love salads that have like apples, sliced apples in them, with honey and mustard drizzled over it. So not really a favorite, but there are specific things I look for in a salad. My most recently read favorite book. So I've been waiting ages for this one. It's called The Librarian of Crooked Lane by C.J. Archer. I love her books. She mixes fantasy and history very beautifully, and mystery. If you haven't looked her up yet, you should. She is absolutely fantastic. Um, Favorite 80s movie? It's got to be Star Wars, Revenge of the Sith. No, sorry, Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, and oh goodness, what was the last one called? Return of the Jedi, of course. I love those. Those are both made in the 80s, so those are probably my favorite 80s movies. The best things my kids have ever said. I was just talking to my husband about this the other day. When I had little kids, we watched a lot of Marvel cartoons and the live action Lion Witch in the Wardrobe. And I heard my kids, like, we had foam swords and they were playing in the room, and I heard my oldest child yell in like this really triumphant, like, we're gonna do it voice for Narnia and for Asgard. And then the other two little kids said, yeah. So whatever epic battle they were playing, they were doing it for both Narnia and Asgard. And that was a priceless moment when I knew I was parenting well. Rory asked, what are my future plans? I have a lot of future plans. Among them is world domination, but through books, through kissing books specifically. So it'll be a nice, gentle takeover. I don't know. This year and the last year have been kind of hard on me publication wise. So next year I'm planning to worry less about getting a pre-order up and writing books in a certain order, and going more with how I feel creatively at the moment in terms of which book I write next. So that's kind of a fun answer. It's going to be a surprise for all of us. All right. So Allison asked, when writing, how do you come up with the conflict? Is it premeditated or do you wing it as it happens? And nearing the end of the story, how do you add more punch? This is a craft question. And it's something that you could probably devote an entire class to. I've been to classes like that. The conflict generally comes from how well I know the characters in terms of, if I have two characters who both are opposites, that is going to, have opposite political views or something, that's going to cause a lot of conflict. So conflict generally stems from the characters themselves. I usually have an idea for like an external conflict, like something that happens outside of who the characters are. And that's it. And then I kind of let the rest of the conflict between the two of them, the smaller things, just happen as I'm writing. As for adding more punch, I don't know that I do that. That's something that I have to work with my editor on almost with every story, because I have an idea for how I want a conflict, the big main conflict, or how I want the ending to feel for a reader. And I write it out and then I show it to my editor and we talk. And she usually helps me make small adjustments throughout the story so that that ending part has more punch. But it's hard. It's not something that I feel like I'm an expert at. But I'm learning and working on it. So there you go. That's not a very good answer, but it honestly is a question that would take a long time to do justice to. All right. This is from Teresa. She says, your Christmas book that is coming out, is it a standalone book or does it need to be read as part of a series? I try to write all my books so that if you pick them up out of order, you'll still enjoy the story and you will know what's going on. It should still be a good story. But it's kind of like coming into season 2 of a show. You might enjoy it, but they have a few inside jokes or characters that are from season 1. And if you haven't watched season 1, you're not going to enjoy those moments as much as people who have. So you can completely read it as a standalone. But if you read the first 3 books in that series, you'll probably enjoy some of the cameos and inside jokes a little bit more. Okay. What, this is from Lisa, is the inspiration for your plot or storyline in your next book? How do you decide on the personalities of your characters? Um, the next book is a Christmas book, and the inspiration from it came from the fact that Lord Farley, Simon, is kind of worried about whether or not he's doing a good job because his father, the Duke, is an amazing man, and he just doesn't know if he's going to measure up to his dad. And you kind of got a little bit of that in the previous book when he was when he was a secondary character. So I wanted to explore that a little bit more. I'm an oldest child, and so I have a lot of baggage about measuring up and being, the perfect kid. As I'm sure many of you oldest children can relate to that. Simon is the oldest child, and he has that syndrome. He's just worried that he is not doing a good job. So that's a big part of the plot, is how we take him from serious and worried to somebody a little bit more relaxed and happy. How do I decide on personalities of my characters? I actually take personality tests for my characters, which is fun. So as I'm sitting and thinking about these characters and developing them, and I kind of know their place in the world and what that would have meant historically, I take like the Myers-Briggs, the 16 personalities personality test, and I go through and I answer the questions as if I am the character. And then I read all the summary stuff that goes with that personality type. And it really helps as I'm developing the character and as I'm putting information about them into a book. So that's how. This is from Gina. She says, is your husband's personality in any of your male characters? If you read Letters for Phoebe, and you meet Griffin, who is the hero in that book, and then you read The Earl and His Lady, and you read my Western, Copper for the Countess. Take all three of those heroes and mix them up, and you have an approximation of my husband, or at least how I see him. I borrow several of his positive traits and use those I use those character traits on steroids sometimes to create my male characters. Sometimes not. A lot of the time, I will bounce ideas off my husband, though, to see if I'm writing a male character accurately. Would a guy say or do this? And most of the time, he says, yeah, sure. Sometimes he goes, no man would ever. I'm keeping it that way anyway. Ray asked, do some of your characters stay with you even when you're done with their series? Do you think about what they are doing and where they would be in their lives? Yes, I know exactly what happens to my characters long after the last page of their story. It's not necessarily that I think about them from time to time, but just that their history is in my head. So it's there. It's been fun to get ready to write the Return to Inglewood series, because everyone else is going to get to see what the characters from the original Inglewood series have been up to. Stuff that I already know will be news to my readers, and I love that. I love that I'll be able to share that perspective. So let's see. This is from, I think her name is Burley. She asked a few questions, so this is the first of them. When writing a series, do you know who will get their own story in advance, or does that happen as you write? I usually plan out several books in a series, so I know that there will be 4 or 5 people, and I know who the main people are going into it. Someone who kind of surprised me was Philippa, who I wrote as the sister to the hero in His Unexpected Heiress. I wasn't planning on writing a book about her, but then another multi-author series came up with some of those same authors. So I wrote her book, and I loved every minute of it. And her book has been so well received by readers. Her book is called Her Unsuitable Match. Yeah, Her Unsuitable Match. And it was just such a joy to write that book. And like I said, it's been probably my most read book, most well-received book out of any that I've released. So that was a nice surprise. Writing the Branches of Love series, I wasn't planning on writing a book for Harry, who is the brother of the sisters introduced in the first book, but a lot of people were asking for a book for him. So that book was not planned at all either. And I realized that Lord Neil needed a book the first time he appeared on the page. And he wound up being the fifth hero in the fifth book of my Inglewood series. So, no, I don't always know. Sometimes it happens along the way. And sometimes, like, I grow and go, oh no, now this guy needs his own book. I have to tell his story. So, both ways. I'm so helpful when I answer questions with, yeah, both. Let's see. Do you have a favorite series you've written? No, I love them all. They are all my babies. So none of them are my favorite. I love them all. And then Burley also asked, do you read other books often? Yes, I read books all the time, a few pages of something that isn't mine every day. If so, what genre author is your favorite? Genre/author. I read a lot of fantasy. I think I said that a few minutes ago, but a lot of fantasy. Not really epic. Most of my stuff is a little bit lighter. I love fantasy worlds. I love urban fantasy. I love magical realism. So anything with a hint of magic or an entire cast made up of elves, I am very happy to read. It's an escape, and I love that. I actually rarely read Regency romances anymore, even though that's what I write. And it's in part because when I read nonfiction, it's all Regency nonfiction. I do read select books by my friends who are authors. So I'll read their stuff, but I don't pick up a whole lot of new Regency authors or books. It just kind of feels like work after a little while. And sometimes I don't think that's fair either, because I may have done research that makes me, more aware of the places where the author has mixed reality with fantasy, or made up things or whatever. So I don't always think it's fair for a Regency author to read a lot of Regency. It's just kind of weird. It's like if you were what's a good example? If you're a nurse and you work at a hospital, and then you came home and in your leisure time, all you did was watch medical thrillers. I'm sure there are some nurses who do that and love it. But speaking from experience of the nurses that I know, they hate medical thrillers. They don't want to watch hospital TV shows because they've been in a hospital all day. They'd rather watch something else. So that's kind of sort of how I am with what I read. Okay. Leslie, what is the most random, bizarre thing to inspire your writing? I tripped over my husband, and that wound up being the meet cute in Mr. Gardner and the Governess. He was fixing something. He was laying in like one of the rooms of our house. I walked in, had no idea he was laying down, tripped completely over his legs, and was like, that would be a great way for characters to meet. And so it wound up in a book. There you go. Leslie also asked, if you were forced, which would you choose? You only read the first page of every book you read, or only read the last page of every book you read? What kind of a question is that? If I'm forced, who's forcing me? What happens if I don't choose? I can't choose. I don't know. Answer the question, my dear readers. What would you choose? The first page only or the last page? I don't know. I think that's a horrible question to ask any reader. Leslie's a friend, so I can tease a little bit. Jane asked, does the whole story come to you at once, or does it come when actually writing the story? Kind of answered that. Doesn't all come at once. It trickles in. Like I have some main points that I know I want to write, but the rest of it develops kind of sort of along the way. Oh, this is Kristen's, and she asked, what is your favorite Christmas romance novel? I read a ton of Christmas novels. It's kind of hard to pick. I really liked, oh goodness, Mimi Matthews, the book she wrote. Do I have a copy of it right now? I don't think I have a copy of it sitting, but I think it's called A Christmas by Gaslight or Gaslamp. It's Mimi Matthews. The cover is gorgeous. There's a beautiful woman in a red Victorian Christmas dress. I love that book. I think it's excellent. I waited a long time to actually read it again because, reading historical romance kind of feels like an extension of work. But when I finally read it, I was so lost in the story. I completely just enjoyed myself. It was absolutely fantastic. Okay. Annie Bateman said, "What plot twist have you always wanted to include but could never make it work?" I don't have anything off the top of my head right now, but usually I can figure out a way to make a plot twist works, or at least like a trope work. I really, for example, love You've Got Mail and the original short story that is based off of that was written 100 years ago. And I use that kind of to inspire Letters for Phoebe, which is a novella, and it has the You've Got Mail vibes. I don't know. I'll have to think about that because most of the plot twists I want to use, I just use. I just make them work. Maybe that means I need to stretch myself a little bit more, though. You're okay, buddy. He doesn't like it when Mama talks to the screen. He's really confused by that. I think that's all the pre-submitted questions. I may have. Oh, I did get one question from Cherie that was, how do you deal? Here, take that off. How do you deal with imposter syndrome? Or maybe you don't struggle with it. Every creative person I know struggles with imposter syndrome. How I deal with it is I either push through it as best I can, or I talk to my friends who are also writers. If you want to be a writer, if you're considering it, start building your writing community today, because other writers, other creative people, they're so important, especially in those hardest moments of writing. You need somebody who understands and who can tell you, you're going to get through this and you're going to do a good job. So everybody who's creative deals with imposter syndrome. That's just part of it. With every book, I wonder, is this going to be the one that everyone reads and says, no, she lost it, she can't write anymore? Or why did we ever like her stuff in the first place? With every book, I question myself, and I just hope for the best. So there are a few questions that came in while I was doing this, and a few hellos from Hawaii. Ooh, hi, Lisa. And Deanna made it. We totally lost. Yeah, when the thing disappeared, I don't know which part of our little talk disappeared, but here's a question from Deanna. What was your favorite part or place that you visited when you went to England on your much anticipated holiday? York, all of York. And that is why you're going to get an entire series based in York. And I'm actually really hoping and planning and hoping that the plan to go to York this spring is going to work out, because I have a little bit more to work on before I start doing that series. But I have almost an entire shelf worth of York research books, so we'll see how that goes. Let's see. Here we go. Will you be making a CD with all of your audiobooks? This would be very much appreciated to take on trips to listen to. Thanks. I'm sorry. There are no plans to make CDs. That would take an awful lot of capital that I do not have. The best thing that I can suggest is getting the audiobooks on something like chirpbooks.com. They're usually fairly inexpensive there. Downloading them to your device and playing them that way on trips. Sorry. People are excited for Return to Inglewood. See, I have proof. And a tickly throat. Oh, when it comes to whether we could only read the last or first page ever, Nickel Fan says they prefer the last page to know how story ends. But if you can only read that, and this is not trying to put you on the spot in particular, but just the idea, if you can only read the last page, you're reading the ending of a story about characters you know nothing about. Why do you care how it ends if you don't know anything about them? Holiday by Gaslight is the Mimi Matthews book. Thank you for having my back. And apparently, it's free right now on Kindle, so y'all go check that out. Yeah, that's one of her favorites too. Okay, I'm just checking like these things. It's a rude question. Blocking that user forever. Yeah, that was a rude question I just deleted. Oh, and Deanna says she wants to hear how Silas and Esther are doing. You're gonna find out. It's gonna be lovely. But those are all the questions that I had. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for everybody who submitted questions ahead of time. I always like doing these. I hope y'all enjoyed it. This is the first time that I've simultaneously streamed to YouTube, and I know I have a huge group of people on YouTube who are getting to know me through my audiobooks. Thank you so much for doing that. Thank you so much for watching on YouTube. Thank you so much for subscribing to my YouTube channel. That has been a new venture for me, and oh my goodness, I am so excited that so many people are finding my audiobooks that way. So, like, subscribe, keep watching on YouTube. That's fantastic. And for my Facebook fans, thank you so much. Y'all have been here, almost all of you, since the beginning. I truly appreciate that. And your support means the world to me. I'm excited to release a book in a couple of weeks, and I hope everybody enjoys it and loves the Christmas wintry feel. So, thanks so much for watching, and I will catch y'all later.